Hello, everyone, and welcome to Madlet Musings. And today I have back to talk books with me, Mesu Andrews. And
Yay!
I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. I love chatting with you, girl.
Well, we were already starting to get into the book stuff before we hit record, and I'm like, wait, wait,
Wait,
wait,
wait.
let's push the button. So we are
Yes.
recording now.
Okay. All right.
Great. But you have a new book out, which is
Yes.
actually a sequel
hmm
to Potiphar's Wife.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about this new one.
Well, In Feast or Famine is the conclusion of Joseph's story. So when we
Mm.
left Joseph in Potiphar's wife, poor fella, he was in
Oh,
prison,
yeah,
unjustly so, right? He
yeah.
was unjustly accused of rape.
hmm
Um, Potiphar's wife, and no spoilers in this whole thing, but I will tell you it's a little bit of a spoiler, but he he did find love in Potiphar's wife. He did,
Oh.
yes. There was this Hebrew slave that they
hmm
had this wonderful relationship. And in fact, such a wonderful relationship that when my editor, she knew it was coming, right?
Yeah,
Because we know, biblical spoilers are in there. We
right,
know that he has to marry Asenath, right?
right, right.
Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah,
hmm
the priest of On, which is the high priest of Ra, which is the sun god of Egypt,
Right,
the big boy, the big god,
right.
yeah, right? So our faithful Yahweh worshiping Joseph has to marry a pagan priest's daughter. Now, how do we do that? How does that reconcile? And especially when he's in love with this wonderful Hebrew woman. And my editor was like, oh, no, no, no. I can't do it. I am not going to edit that book. I am so sorry because I am so mad. I already know how it has to go. And nope, not going to do it. I love Ahira. I love this Hebrew slave. I love their relationship. I love that he loves her and she loves him. And no, I don't want, I, so what was I going to do? How are we going to get Joseph from madly in love with this wonderful character
Right.
to happily married? Because, I mean, mm, if,
Yeah.
if you're going to write if you're going to write biblical fiction, it really kind of needs to have some sort of hope in it, right?
Right.
It
Right.
doesn't have to have a happy
Right.
ending, but it has to have a hopeful ending,
Right.
right? We
Right.
were taught that from the very start, right?
hmm
so, hmm. So that was my dilemma from the very beginning. So
That's a
how do
pretty
we
big
get
one.
Joseph? It was. How do we get Joseph out of love with one woman without
hmm
it being too corny or
Right.
contrived?
Right. And do we know what happened with that? Or is it
So,
just real quiet or hmm.
yeah. So first thing I did was I did what all very professional researchers do. I Googled it.
Googled it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wikipedia
Mhm.
is a great resource for that.
That's also,
hmm
yeah, the
Yeah.
number one go-to for all serious researchers. Yes. So,
We
but
both
but
just lost a huge percentage
I
of readers with
know.
that comment. They're like, well then.
Well then, click, hanging up now. Anyway, yeah, no, but I seriously
Yeah.
did
Well, yeah.
because it
Yeah.
was just kind of a silly fun, someplace fun to start. So
Right.
anyway, but I really did kind of hit the jackpot on Google this time.
Nice.
I did. So I found this PDF, Joseph and Asenath PDF, and it's like public domain,
Okay.
and it's an ancient text that was ancient biblical fiction. It's a novel that
Who
was
wrote it?
written. I don't even know. So, and neither does
Okay.
anybody else. So it
Okay.
kind of started out as a Jewish text, so
Okay.
Jewish fiction.
Okay.
Um, and it was used. This is the really fun part. It was used to get people to convert to Judaism because it told the story of Joseph and Asenath's their meeting, their
Okay.
courtship, their marriage, and then how the brothers got to know Asenath. One of them fell in love with Asenath. I mean, it was just
Oh
this.
my.
And you would have loved it because there was cloak and dagger kind of stuff going on,
Oh,
Jamie Joe.
all right.
Oh,
All
it was
right.
just, yes. Oh my goodness.
I like
And all,
this old
oh,
dead writer person that we don't know.
yes.
All
And
right.
so, but then it's funny because it was written somewhere between 200 BC and 200 AD. And then it morphed into something, and we had all sorts of wine and bread symbolism. And then it became something used as in the early Christian church to convert people from Judaism to Christianity. So the
Interesting.
Christians borrowed it. Yes, so the
Wow.
Christians borrowed it. Isn't that fascinating? And so I decided, if whatever's good for them, I thought I might be able to borrow some of it too. So I borrowed the part where Potipharah
Okay.
raised Asenath
Mm-hmm.
in a tower from the time she was a little girl until the moment she met or she saw Joseph, actually, from the very top of her tower. And she was like, whoa, whoa, that is some kind of hot Hebrew right there. That that was the Mesusian
That was a
version.
direct quote.
That was the Mesusian version of that PDF. But yes, she said, whoa, I've never been in contact with any man but my father more than 3 feet away from me. But he's pretty hot fella. So and that's so we've got our very own biblical version of Rapunzel right here in
Yeah.
Feast or Famine. So
Yeah.
there it is. Yeah,
Rapunzel,
it was so
Rapunzel,
fun.
let down your hair has now been changed
And
to Asnath.
yeah,
Asnath, let down
yes,
your hair.
let down your hair. And she does have her own hair.
Well, that's
That's the big
good.
thing. She does. Well, in Egypt, they didn't. All those wigs, the women would shave their heads, and so they didn't have their own hair. But we left Asenath with her
With
own
her own
hair,
hair.
and that's part
Oh,
of the reason because if she's going to be biblical Rapunzel, she got to have her
she's
own
gotta have
hair,
her own
right?
hair.
I mean, come on,
Yeah.
yeah.
All
So there
right.
you go. That's part of this
I love
book.
it.
I know, isn't that fun? But now, seriously, because the Jews and the early Christians use this as basically a proselytizing kind of a book,
Right.
that really did give me the theme for this book.
Oh,
It said to me that, okay, Asenath was probably converted, right?
very
Think
possibly.
about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because her two sons became part of the 12 tribes of Israel,
This is true.
Manasseh and
And
Ephraim.
Ephraim.
And
Hmm.
so now this is when I'm right. I just Googled as a fun,
Mm-hmm.
silly start to my research. But as I read this PDF, it became very clear to me that, okay, if her sons became a part of Israel's tribes,
Mm-hmm.
that had to mean something to what happened in that
Right.
household.
Right.
And so it gave me the foundation in a scriptural, I felt like biblical foundation to say, you know what, I can I can go into this book believing with my whole heart that Joseph somehow was able to put his whole heart into this relationship.
Hmm.
And he
Interesting.
was able to give his heart to Yahweh
Mm-hmm.
and to say to him, okay, I'm going to go into this marriage and let you change my heart. One of my favorite scriptures is, well, favorite is maybe a loose term there, Philippians 2:13, because it says, it is God who works in me to will and to act according to his good pleasure. And the reason that's a favorite for me is because a lot of times I don't want to act right.
Right. Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to pray the nice thing.
No, I want to
I
pray
don't
evil on
know.
something.
Right? Exactly. I don't,
Justice.
I, right. I don't want to forgive somebody. I don't
Right.
want to be nice today.
Right.
I don't, I don't want to be nice to that salesperson on the other end of the phone who has called me for the third time today, the same person.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, could you not take me
Right.
off your list for the third time that I've asked today? So, but it is God who works in me to will and to act.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because our God is the same God in the Old Testament
Yeah.
as he is in the New Testament, I believe that Joseph could have said, Yahweh, Elohim, work in my heart to not only let go of my love for Ahira,
Mm-hmm.
but to embrace a wife that I had no choice in choosing.
Mm-hmm.
Because what was he going to do? I mean, Pharaoh gave her to him. You
Right.
don't
You don't
you
tell
don't
Pharaoh
reject
no.
a gift. Yeah,
No.
that's not an
I
option.
mean,
It's just
Moses
not.
does later, so we saw how that went.
Well, yeah, that just didn't work so pretty good. Mm-mm. Not so pretty good.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of the struggle we see in Joseph
Yeah.
um, throughout the book. But this book is Asnath's book.
Okay.
It's really about her, and it's about her journey,
Mm-hmm.
um, because her journey, when she's 4 years old, she witnesses the murder of her mother,
Mm.
and her mom's last words are to her, and she says to her, "Heal Egypt."
Mm.
And so
Sure.
Asaph, she grows up thinking, I'm going to be a high priestess. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to become Isis, the
Mm-hmm.
healer, the mother of Egypt.
Right.
And so that's her purpose. So she's in this tower from age 4 to age 19, preparing to marry a pharaoh, an
Mm-hmm.
Egyptian, pure blooded Egyptian, so that they can get rid of these Hyksos, these
Right.
foreign rulers. And that's what she's prepared for. Her purpose in life was set
Yeah.
from her mother's last words all through, and her father has trained her for this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what she knows she's going to do. And then lo and behold,
Mm-hmm.
her father shows up with this edict that the Pharaoh has given her to a Hebrew, one of those awful Hyksos.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. Yes. So
Wow.
her journey then is, not only does he serve a God she doesn't think even exists,
Right.
but
Right.
he's one of those awful people who were a part of the army that came in and killed her mother.
Mm. Sure.
So
Sure.
yeah, how does
Yeah.
she get over that? Yeah.
It's interesting. So when you're researching somebody like Asnath, who only has, if I remember correctly, a very brief mention
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah,
scripture.
very. Yep.
So, a lot of this is just things that might have happened in her
Yes.
life. How do
Yep.
you do research on somebody where they've got one line and he married Asnath? Boom, done.
And he married
What?
Asma. Yep. Yep. Well, you find historical things
Right?
like that little PDF,
Yes. Yes.
yes. And there is some Jewish tradition on
Okay.
her.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and so always in writing biblical fiction, the way I do it. Now,
Hmm.
this is not everybody's
Hmm.
process, but my process. I read everything I can in scripture about this circumstance. So I read
Sure.
all the scripture on Joseph until I can pretty much tell you which chapter
Hmm.
each of these events is in.
Sure.
I know the Bible account.
Hmm.
Um, it's like they train a teller in a bank. They teach her the truth is. They teach her what
Right.
an authentic money looks like,
Right.
so
So
that she
she
can recognize them,
exactly.
any counterfeit.
Right.
They don't try to teach her all the counterfeits. They
Right.
teach what the truth is. And
Mm.
so that's what I do. I study the truth
Hmm.
so that then I can recognize whatever counterfeits come along.
Right.
So I do that first. And then I start looking at historical stuff.
Okay.
So I look at rabbinic literature.
Hmm.
I, I look at archaeology
Hmm.
studies. I look at there's tons and tons of Egyptology, what they've dug up
Hmm.
and that kind of thing. So I look at the history around that time.
Hmm.
I look at the culture and how that period of Egypt, how they functioned, how their government functioned, and then I plug my characters into those situations.
Sure.
Um, and it's really fun to do the research on specific locations.
Okay.
Um, so when they travel, because Joseph went all over Egypt, and so some of the places that they traveled are just fascinating.
I bet.
Oh my goodness. And especially when they went into the Fayum, there were some amazing temples in that area,
Mm.
and it was kind of the recreational spot of Egypt for the
Okay.
kings during
Okay.
that period. They did a lot of their big game hunting in the Fayum, and one of the temples was the crocodile temple. And oh my goodness, you can find anything on YouTube, right? I mean, seriously, if you can fix your
Right.
refrigerator with a video on YouTube, you can also find the Temple of the Crocodiles on YouTube. I'm telling you, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they put jewels on their crocodile god. They bathed him in milk. Oh, it was
Oh,
just fantastic. Yeah.
precious.
It's precious. Definitely. So just lots
That's
of fun
funny.
things to find.
Oh, I'm
Mhm,
sure that's got to be so interesting. And, it's funny too, because you're mentioning when Joseph traveled all over Egypt. There's this silly
mhm.
part of me that's still childish when I think of Egypt. I literally think of Egypt as one location, not like this widespread
Right.
area, population, land. I picture it like Egypt is a city and that's all that exists. It's like right there.
Yep.
Everything is in this one spot, and it's not.
No, no. And everybody thinks, oh, there's pyramids all over Egypt. No,
No.
no, they're not. They're pretty much, I mean, they're really, the big ones are really located in one kind of area.
Mhm.
Um, Maybe two or three, but there really are not
They're
a
not
ton of,
widespread. Mm-mm.
no, they're really
No.
not.
No.
And there really is only, they really travel on the Nile.
Mhm.
And then when the Nile gets low, there's not a lot of traveling. They
Yeah.
stay put.
Yeah.
And so because there was famine for 7 years,
Right.
there during that time, it was tough traveling.
Right.
So for them to have to, and here's the other thing that we forget, or we read over and don't realize,
Mhm.
and that is they part of what was so interesting about this famine is part of Joseph's plan was that anybody who wanted grain, they come to one central place
Right.
to get the grain.
Right.
That means some people from the southern portions of Egypt, they were traveling for a week or more,
Wow.
just one way to
Yeah.
get this grain on an almost dry bed Nile.
Wow. Yeah, it wasn't
And
like just run
so,
into your local
uh-uh.
Walmart.
And no. And the other part of that is, think about this. Remember, he had all of the gnomes save their grain
Mhm.
in their own area, but they still had to come to him way up in the northern part, which is called Lower Egypt, which is always confusing to me, but it's elevation wise
Okay.
lower.
Okay.
Um, and they still had to come up there to get grain. Well, what that meant is they had to get up there to get the voucher to get
Oh,
the grain and
okay.
release the grain to them that was in their area that they had stored in their area. I know it makes no sense to us right now, but here's the thing. At that point, Egypt had been divided into Lower Egypt and
Okay.
Upper Egypt. And that was part of, all right, ready? Remember
Yeah.
what was Asnath, what was her mother's final words?
Heal Egypt.
Heal Egypt. Bring it back together as one.
Oh, sure.
And in having the grain come all from one
Mm-hmm.
single place, that was one of the steps in healing Egypt. So, though it seemed like an absolutely ridiculous thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
that was one step forward in uniting Egypt into a single nation again.
Nation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So what seems, and it was a point of tension in the book for people, they didn't see why they had to do that. They didn't understand. And so often, in our governments, we the people
Mm-hmm.
don't sometimes understand because it puts us, it's a
Right.
disadvantage for us. it's
Right.
it's an annoyance, it's
Mm-hmm.
too much trouble, it's whatever. But we don't have the entire country in mind
Right.
oftentimes.
Right.
And let's put that on the church.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes something that our pastor decides, or our elder board, or our whatever the polity of our church is,
Right.
they may decide something that's better for the body,
Mm-hmm.
but it
Mm-hmm.
puts us out.
Yeah.
Uh, How gracious are we with that?
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
think about that a minute. So, yeah,
Yeah. Wow. Well, there sounds like there is a lot in this book that readers are going to enjoy,
I hope so.
and learn just some elements even of Egyptian history that maybe we're not familiar with and didn't realize was there. So, and I
I
mean,
hope
and then you
so.
throw in the Rapunzel angle, and
Well, yeah, I
you
mean,
know,
come on.
here we
Then
go.
we all have to go back and watch Rapunzel, for crying out
Right,
loud.
right. And the quote of the podcast was the haughty Hebrew. So I think
Well, yeah.
we'll just have to title this podcast, "What About That Haughty Hebrew?" with
What
Mesu
about
Andrews.
him? Yes, the Haughty Hebrew and Biblical Rapunzel.
I love it. I love it. Oh man. Well, this book is available now, correct? It is
Yes,
hit
it is.
shelves.
Mm-hmm.
So readers can
Yep.
go ahead and get that at your favorite bookseller. And you can find Mesu Andrews all over online. You're not hard to find.
No, not hard. There aren't too many Misus around.
No, there's not. I'm just proud that I think I'm pronouncing it correctly now.
You are. Good job, girl. Yay.
Oh, this is so much fun to have you on the podcast, and I'm sure we will have you again in the future. But thanks so much for coming.
Thank you, girl. Appreciate you.